Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Oh, what a great audience. Let's dim the lights for this next one. Nope, too much. There it is. Gotta get things just right. Like Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Tell us what you want to pay, and we help you find coverage options that fit your budget. And now, the mood is right. Wait, the lights are back on again. Trudy, can you? And now it's completely dark.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Check out Night Dreams Talk Radio on the web at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Well, here I am. Here it is. Well, a beautiful day at the harbor in Washington State. Boy, the weather is hot. The other problem is my air conditioning is still not hooked up in the studio. And right now, I'm punching about 105 degrees, and it is growing. Hey, Walt, you on here? Hey, Walt, are you on here?
I'm on here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. How's your day going, and how's the weather in your part of the country?
We've been cool. We've been nice. We've been in the 70s.
Well, that you know,
I'm in Virginia.
Well, here I am in Washington State. We're in the 90s right now, and you know I'm not used to it. But you know, earth changes is really going on. A lot of people deny it. But you know, Walt, back here about 2 months ago, we broke a record of 91 degrees. And, you know, the highest temperature 2 months ago was ever recorded was like 71. So we were 20 degrees higher than normal. And you know what I find really interesting? You know, I have a little mini farm. I got a little fish pond with a lot of little fish in it. Every winter, that thing will freeze solid for a couple months. The last 2 years, you know, 2 years ago, it got a little layer of ice on it. This past winter, nothing. No ice, no nothing. No ice going up my staircase to my house. Something is going on with our weather.
Well, I remember in the 1980s when we first became concerned with a problem that they called a hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica. And they were concerned that this hole or thin spot would allow more sunlight in, cause melting of the ice, and warming, at least for a while. Okay? And I warned, starting, I guess, actually in the 1960s, that one thing that could be occurring would be thin spots in the atmosphere, which could travel. And this was because of ozone thinning. And when you are in a thin spot, what you get is hotter days and colder nights, or hotter summers and colder winters. So I have somewhat disputed the claims of global warming because I think that the problem is an atmospheric thinning, which will allow for more warming and greater colds.
Well, do you feel that was brought on by, well, some people are saying it's because the methane gas from all the cows. I believe that not, well, I know they produce a lot of methane gas, but I think it's all our aerosols, all our cars running around, the planes flying, all that stuff has been thinning it out.
Yeah, they changed the formula for aerosols in part because of that. And it was changed for all air conditioning units and for all, like, little products like deodorants and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but
there's also been an increase in concrete, which is reflective. So there's a lot of factors. And, my forte as a psychic or shaman has been to influence weather. And at one point I was hoping that people might learn to care about the environment. And even if there are natural phases that our planet might go through, there is also an impact from our modern civilization. So there are things we could do to improve the situation. And what I have found was that instead of people seeking to learn, they just basically continued living like locusts. I mean, it's sort of sad. In some ways, I can view it as my own failure as a teacher. And I guess that's a little bit left field from where you were going with all of that. But
no, not really.
You started talking about weather to a person who does weather, so I had to make a comment on it.
Hey, the whole point of my show, unlike a lot of shows, I talk to you like, hey, we're sitting, at a kitchen table and talking to each other and talking about, the paranormal or things, anything to do with the paranormal. Wow. And I failed as a host tonight. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and a little bit about you?
All right. Well, I've described myself as a metaphysician and as a spiritualist, a psychic, a shaman, or a shamus, which is a shaman's shaman in energy hierarchies. I said I'm more akin to being a projector as a psychic than as a receiver, meaning I am more accustomed to channeling universal energies back out rather than just receiving them. In metaphysical or paranormal circles, I've been known as someone with an ability to influence weather. And there have been all kinds of newspaper articles and radio interviews about me since, I guess, 1980 or so. All right, I stood above ground and said I would use my influence to protect a designated area from being hit with the eye of a hurricane. And I picked an area that was prone to being hit. And for 30 years, I had a very, very good track record. And I was once tested by psychic debunker James Randi. And the results of that test are available. And I think I passed, but he never acknowledged me. And he did not debunk me publicly. So in a backhanded way, I gained his, at least, neutrality, right? And in metaphysical circles, I've been known as Jualt, which is spelled Jualt, like Juan, but Walt with Spanish phonetics. And for 12 years or more, I was the moderator, editor, and publisher of a forum with no name, which was a forum for those of metaphysics by those of metaphysics. And today I'm basically retired and older and coping with COPD. And I'm somewhat done, except every now and then I get some requests for weather, I like to focus on teaching people how to cope with internal and external negativity in positive ways, and how to create peace of being, peace of mind, because from that wholeness, your energy will flow smoothly, and it can help people to learn how to harness their own psychic abilities.
Well, you know what? I would like to talk about that. We got you for, well, about 50 minutes. Why don't we talk a little bit about this Planet X and a little bit about UFOs, and then why don't we talk about what you know, you're the guest. And I pretty much leave it up to what the guest wants to talk about. But I've been getting so many people.
All right. Well, how did you get interested in Planet X?
Well, I hate to say it. I used to listen to Art Bell from the beginning. Art Bell was a personal friend of mine. He really believed in Planet X. I mean, I've done a lot of research on it. Also, I do feel that it might be appearing. From what I've been reading, that if you're in Antarctica, you can actually spot it. Where everywhere else on this planet is not noticeable yet. That's what I know, and I know that it is going to come between the Earth and the Sun. And some psychics, some scientists, and a lot of people say it could do major damage to Earth, maybe life extinction on Earth. So I just want your point of view on it and how you feel.
I'm not sure that it will come between Earth and the Sun, because that would put it very, very close to the Sun. I have more of an image of it with an elliptical orbit going outside of Earth, maybe inside the Earth orbit, but not between us and the Sun. I think that could be a gravitational problem if it did that. And I don't think its orbit indicates that it would have that kind of a history with us. All right. I know you can go back to it came around and there was a gravitational collision with one of its moons and a planet, and it ended up putting Mars where Mars is. We ended up where we are. The moon is, and the asteroid belt is the shattered remains. And then a few orbits later, they came here searching allegedly for minerals and things and for our resources, got tired of doing the work, and genetically modified the hominids and created what became modern man, and was evidenced in part by the civilization in Sumer, which seemed to have, sprang up fully grown out of nowhere. And then there was an argument between those who liked the humans and those who didn't really like them. And there was wild ones that were breeding and going off on their own, and that might be related to the flood, but that some were saved by the one that had helped to create us and wanted to maintain us. And then there's the view that they left, where I might be more personally inclined to believe never left. Okay, so they're viewed as a reptilian race, and perhaps there are more than one reptilian race, but they are at least one of them, and not the shapeshifters, the Dracos, but perhaps they are. Now, we are technologically to a point where we might be more able to recognize them. Another thing I am not sure of is if this is going to be a physical planet. Our planets are physical, or if it's an interdimensional planet which would make viewing it maybe more difficult until it hits the gravitational fields of other planets in our solar system or vibrations from our sun, which will make it more visible to us. One thing I do find interesting from, Zachariah Sitchin's accounts was he portrayed it as having an elliptical orbit. And we knew all of our planets were circular orbits. And the idea of an elliptical, 3,600-year orbit or something of that nature seemed far-fetched, if for no other reason than it puts it in the cold of space. And we didn't really think that would be in what is today called the comfort zone to sustain life, okay? But in our examinations of planets in other solar systems, what we have come to find is that the elliptical orbit seems to be more common than circular orbits. And to me, that helps to validate what Zachariah Sitchin translated.
Well, what do you think would happen, though? They're saying that it's going to happen very soon. I mean, what's your gut feeling on it? And do you think it's going to cause major chaos to Earth? I mean, we survived the last time it came by. So, I mean, the reports I read from some scientists saying it will be life extinction on Earth. But, I don't believe that, because 3,600 years ago, it came by, supposedly, and we are still here.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. As far as historically, its orbit does not seem to have caused damage. Right? Now, you could argue that and conjecture or rabidly speculate, which is always safe to say. You can say anything you want if you preface it with, well, this is my rabid speculation, right? Because how can they argue with that, right? So, rabid speculation could be that some of this was related to the extinction of the dinosaurs, right? And that could have been some of the debris from the collision with another planet in our solar system. And some could argue that perhaps an influence for the Great Flood was also the passing of Nibiru. I find that there are a lot of underwater cities that were above ground prior to a rapid melting of ice. Right?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
The sea levels went way up, and the major cities were coastal or island because of transport, and that's just the way humans tend to be, as close to water if they can. And so a lot worldwide are underwater now. I mean, off Japan, off of Cuba, it's a little bit of everywhere.
So, I mean, now, some of the reports, it tells you how inaccurate they are. They were saying it was going to hit around 2015-16. Well, it hasn't happened, but according to skyships over cashiers.com, and a good friend of mine who's on my show like once a month, Mary Joyce, who's a retired news reporter, put it up on her website again today that there's a scientist, ex-NASA scientist, saying it is actually, we can actually monitor it from the Antarctica, from the angle.
For me, when you talk Antarctica, I start drifting into flat Earth questions. But
oh yeah,
I do not know, but I would hope that whatever could be viewed in space could be viewed by enough amateur astronomers that they would promote their pictures online so that it would not be a great secret. In other words, I don't think it's a secret that could easily be maintained. I could be wrong, but that's my gut impression.
Oh, yeah. I'm just wondering if all of a sudden, it proves to be true. I mean, it has been debunked a few times because it hasn't appeared when, some people claimed it would be. But I'm just wondering how us, the civilization, would take it if they, were told, hey,
well, it could go a number of ways. All right. The first thing I look at it as is it's like being, are you going to be hit by lightning, right? And if you are, you are, and if you're not, you're not. So until it happens, live your life and enjoy today, because tomorrow is never certain. So it's not something that I would worry about. It's not something I can do anything about. So I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm going to just keep living my life as I would anyway.
Well,
if there's life on it that it might interact with us, that could cause a change that we would have to live with. So to me, that would be a more relevant issue than is it going to destroy us or not. If it's going to destroy us, that's the answer right there. There's no dodging it. There's no getting away from it. It's a done deal. If it's not going to destroy us, and if it does have intelligent life, and if that life is going to contact us or claim jurisdiction over us, you never know. I mean, they might argue about our genetics in the same way that Monsanto tries to claim crops based on its design of them. All right, it's like, who has jurisdiction, right? There's a lot of interesting issues which could arise.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing I want to tell listeners out there, if it does ever come out that Planet X is real, don't stop making house payments. Because I tell you, if you stop making your car payments and house payments saying, hey, why should I bother paying it? Well, wouldn't you feel like a fool if nothing happened at the end? I mean, you remember back years ago when, we hit the 2000, everybody thought that the computers had all crashed because they couldn't handle. Well, it didn't happen, and so no. Hey, you can always worry about the worst. You're right. You could go outside and get hit by lightning, or your wife could get mad at you because you didn't do the dishes and hit you over the head and kill you with a frying pan. That can happen too.
Well, you might have some warning about that, but yeah.
Like 40 years?
One can hope.
Yeah. Well, and that's, little things, that people have been asking about, on a regular basis. I've been getting flooded a lot for the last couple of weeks about Planet X, and Earth changes. The magnetic field is changing drastically.
Well, if you want to talk about Earth changes briefly, all right, I got an article today online that I shared on my Facebook, which is that a 100-yard fissure has opened up in Yellowstone. Now, that could be possibly the most dramatic Earth change that we might have to face. Now, you live west of Yellowstone, so an eruption is not necessarily going to spew ash upon you quickly. You'll be like the last to be hit because it'll have to travel all the way around the planet to get to you. But as a super volcano, that is a potentially civilization-ending event.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, like when Mount St. Helens, went, even where I live, we got covered with ash. And then when you went closer to Mount St. Helens, I mean, they got inches of it. And then the rivers were all, like mucked with ash.
Yeah, but Mount St. Helens is a normal volcano.
Right.
And Yellowstone is a super volcano.
So there's
a big difference. There's a difference in the two.
Well, what's going to happen is
They said if Yellowstone were to erupt, it could wipe out life on the planet.
Yeah, because I remember reading.
Yeah, but see, the most we've seen of activity has been geyser, the old faithful geyser, all right? Up until today, where they're saying 100-yard fissure has opened up. All right, that's more relevant to an eruption.
Oh yeah, but don't forget about a month ago too. They closed part of the park down over there because the ground was actually heating up to the point you couldn't even walk because your shoes would melt. And that just started happening a month ago, where a big area of that happened. But from what I read, if it erupted, it would dump so much in the atmosphere that the Earth would go into a cooling cycle where the crops won't grow. And it's not going to where it's going to kill everybody off that day. It might take a year or 2 or 3, or the crops isn't going to be growing. Yeah,
well, it's what they used to call nuclear winter. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that our world could end. There are. There's the ice melts, causes greater rainfall and flooding, which causes a increase in freshwater runoff, which then cools the ocean thermal currents, which then causes a quick instant freeze. So instead of having an end result, global warming, we're going to get a hotter planet. Instead, what you get is another ice age that happens quickly.
Oh, yeah, and especially like in Europe, it's going to hit them basically the hardest, the fastest, and then it's going to start working its way out. But, even like the last age up here in Seattle, Washington, was covered under a couple thousand feet of ice. But then you travel to like 30 or 40 miles away from it, and the temperatures were back in the 60s, 50s, and like that, where people could, live. But I mean, I wouldn't want to buy any property in Florida right now, and I definitely wouldn't want to buy a penthouse in New York.
In tracing humanity, at one point to Eritrea, and they did a backing of all the mitochondrial DNA, and they surmised an Earth that was mostly ice. I mean, at one point, our planet has gone through a lot of changes. I mean, for a while we had an ammonia atmosphere, right? And the only life form that survived out of that was the amoeba, right? And so then we've had our ice age, and we had our wonderful tropical time where the whole planet was warm and the Atlantic was full of islands, and each island had its own ecosystem, not to mention the one continent for all land masses, which then broke apart and then came back together again. And if you get into studying, say, ancient civilizations, there was the oldest is in theory the time of the Maya, which is not Mayan with an N, but just Maya. And it's a time when all times and dimensions were interconnected by technology. So people would, instead of going into an airport and traveling in an airplane, you go to a port and travel to a different time period where there was a city located in that time period and a city located in this time period. And if you want to get into whether or not there's ETs on Planet X, there are other ETs that have been equally significant to human development, according to, say, myth or scripture. China links itself as a civilization to being directed by the Yellow Emperor, who in theory was from Sirius and used all kinds of technological or robotic devices and helped to teach farming and writing and everything that was attributed to the Anunnaki of Sumer, right? But this was a different ET group from a different designated source, and you go to Japan and you get what's called the Shinto landing, which is their belief system was that they were brought here from another planet and colonized. And you have Native Americans who were interacting with the Sky people who went underground, and they seem to have a similar description as what we today call grays, which can also be described as tall elves. All right, and you have descriptions of your space type things that go with Sumer, except that they're in the megalithic stone structures that seem to interconnect worldwide at one time. So there's a lot going on, is all I'm saying. And apparently remnants have always survived. I mean, there's previous destructions of civilizations, and some went underwater, some went underground, some went into space. And I have wondered if some of our, what if the Greys are future humans and they've been underground and they're remnants of a past civilization, right? And coming back here to try to regain some DNA that they lost because they breeded it out, because they seem to have more of a hive mentality and are genderless as we know gender. So they probably replicate through cloning, kind of thing, to be responsible. And
well, you can only clone so many times. You know that? Well, you can only clone so many times. Just like if you take a recording, right, and you know. No. I'm wrong?
No, because it's not like making a Xerox if you are manipulating just genetic design. It's more like a digital reproduction.
Yeah, but a digital reproduction, after each time you do it, it loses some quality. So, I mean, maybe that's why. I
don't know if the digital does. Other audio and analogs, and that the idea that you lose some quality each replication came from making copies with a Xerox machine.
Right.
Okay? And today, we do not, or from making audio tape of an audio tape of an audio tape with an audio device, right? But today we use better technology. We use digital. And when you make a copy, your copy is as good as the original. It's the same data, right, being preserved. Well, now, you could lose things through accident or error. But it is possible to make a true copy that retains quality.
Well, you can too, but even if one thing I do know about is, you know, digital quite a bit. I know even with the highest quality duplicating, eventually it will start breaking down. You get artifacts. So maybe like again too with the Greys or whatever up there, you know, coming back. That's why they are, you know, abducting people, you know, and I don't know. You know, I don't know if you heard of Timothy Cullen. He was an implant removal by the late Dr. Roger Lear. He's been on the show a couple times, and I find it, you know, so intriguing. Why are they implanting people and monitoring people or whatever is going on? I find all this stuff so interesting. But
yeah, that would indicate a study, which indicate a new experience. Meaning that it isn't a group that has been here for thousands of years, right? This would indicate a group discovering us that wishes to study us.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I even had last, I think Friday, a trucker who, you know, was not into UFOs and the paranormal. One night he was driving his truck, out in the middle of Texas, out in the desert, and all of a sudden he saw this cow being in a beam of light going up in the sky. And, he didn't see any signs of a helicopter, didn't see any signs of, any cables, ropes, or chains. This makes you wonder, if we are, being abducted and studied and experimented on and all that stuff.
Have you ever... Okay. 3 questions. Have you ever seen a UFO? And I'm going to assume that if I say, have you seen one on film or in pictures, you can say yes to that. But I'm going to ask, have you ever seen a UFO in person?
You want me to
And
answer?
I'm going to ask, have you ever met an ET or an IT or an ID, right? From wherever it's from.
Well,
Have you ever interacted with another life form other than a human being?
Other than my wife, no. But I will say this: back in the 70s, I was coming back from North Carolina. I was in New Mexico on the freeway, which at that time I think they had a ridiculously high speed limit, like 100 or 105 miles an hour, and I was cruising in my GTO, like well over 100. And all of a sudden, right then and there, out in the middle of the desert, all of a sudden it looked like daylight right around my car, and it was so bright it hurt my eyes inside the car. And my wife at that time, thank God, I wish they would have abducted her if it was a UFO. That didn't happen. But I pulled off, and I thought, well, gee, it's a helicopter, a state police. Maybe I'm going to get pulled over for something, And I get out of the car, and it's this bright light, and like within a matter of seconds, it was instantly gone. No sounds, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only encounter I've ever had of anything. I can't identify what it was.
Okay. I have had my own encounters, and so I understand the validity of other people's. One of the things I wonder about is, why is it hidden? I mean, it's usually not a good thing that needs to be hidden, right?
I don't think so, no.
And maybe there's fear involved. I mean, have you ever seen the movie They Live?
No, I never have.
It's got a reality. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm still listening to you there.
Yeah. Okay, the movie They Live has got a reality that there's a vibration that makes ETs around us invisible to our perception. And then the humans in this movie are able to get first eyeglasses and then contact lenses, and it allows them to see the aliens that are everywhere. Right?
That would be
And the humans then go on a killing spree. And they want to immediately shoot and kill any ET they see. And I think that the backhanded message of this movie was that any ETs that are here need to hide, because if a human knows that it's an ET, we're going to kill it.
Oh, I think people would freak out. And a lot of people, laugh at me when I say this, but you remember Orson Welles, when he did his broadcast in the 30s, War of the Planets. For all those poor people, it tuned in on CBS radio about 2 to 3 minutes after he did his introduction, telling everybody this is nothing but a radio play. But, people tuned in late, just like you do on TV. You flip channels, you flipped on there. All of a sudden, you're hearing that Earth is being invaded, right? Well, some people in the country actually responded by getting guns, running around looking for aliens. There's a documented case where a guy killed his wife and family because he thought it'd be better for him than, waiting for the aliens to do it. I mean, it was panic. And what gets me is...
How did that fly in court, by the way?
Well, what got me is... He didn't end up in jail over
here's
it.
a conspiracy theory for you real quick. What if the War of the Worlds wasn't a hoax and the aliens won and just hid their victory from us?
Well, we wouldn't know. I mean, the government is so good at hiding everything. You wouldn't know, would you?
No. It's like then when you want to challenge history, what if we lost World War II?
Well, you know what?
Nobody told us.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the movie, but I watched one movie where all the politicians and everybody in power were aliens, taking over. Yeah, all around the whole world, all the leaders,
Well, maybe not when they're elected, but maybe sometime after they arrive in Washington.
Yeah.
Because they sure seem to change once they get there. I once joked, every president is portrayed by the opposition as the Antichrist, right? And this is the one that's going to be a Hitler, and this is the one that's going to destroy everything, and blah, 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 blah. So I figured, well, maybe it's not the person, maybe it's the house. And the house is possessed, and it just takes over whoever goes and lives in it, right?
Yeah, possibility.
But then what? Melania had the house cleansed when they first moved in this time, so she wasn't taking any chances.
Well, back in the 70s, I got a fine from the Federal Communication Commission. If there's anybody working yet with the FCC, if Trump hasn't laid him off or got him to resign, I can say I did a little skit one time on the radio, terrestrial radio. I did a little thing, to take off War of the Worlds. I said, hey, we've just been invaded by aliens from another planet. But don't worry, folks, they only eat brains of the politicians. And that means within a week, they are going to die off because they're going to starve to death because, as you know, the politicians have no brains, and they only eat the brains of the politicians. And I went a little bit more in depth with sound effects and all that. And all of a sudden, like a couple weeks later, I get this fine from the Federal Communication Commission for saying all that stuff. But, hey, I didn't. I paid
fine?
it. I got
like a amount of money you had to pay.
Yeah, I had to pay it, and the station had to pay one.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I might have used a couple of words in there I shouldn't have.
But I'm not surprised. I mean, 3 cheers for everyone who lives free.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Because if you live in fear, you're doing their job for them. So, and if they're getting some attention upon you, then you might be doing something right, and at least you're keeping their attention off of others, right?
Well, something, yeah. Now, you got like about 15 minutes or so. What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about what you do and and all that stuff?
I'm just open to talking about most anything that is interesting or relevant to the host, who is being so gracious and kind and wonderful and nice to give me an opportunity to be a guest. I have 18 radio interviews now resident on my Facebook page for my books, which is, say, the Life of Christos series. And I try to make each one have something unique or different. And there really isn't that much that I haven't said before. So I leave it to you to customize it. I could tell you I am an author, and that my best book is called The Thought of Us. And it is what I call a grimoire, because it is based on research and experience. And it's like a big toolbox to help people learn to cope with internal and external negativity in positive ways. Because when I go on mine, I am beset with people crying and complaining, and it seems to be 90% of what they do. They just don't have it together. And I'd like to think that my textbook could help them to learn to help themselves. But I think that they don't want to help themselves and they don't want to learn. And I'm somewhat discouraged. But for those who do, my book is available on Amazon. And if anyone wants to learn more about me, you can find me by searching for Jualt, which is Jualt. And most of the results you get will be related to me, because when I came up with the name, it was the only time I had ever seen that word. But it has popped up now a few times in different places since then. So there's a smoke screen of a sort, I suppose. What questions might you have? I mean, I'm, as I said, a psychic that has demonstrated an ability to influence weather. For 30 years, I protected a designated area from hurricanes. I was tested by James Randi. He gave me 33 requests. I told him he could pick the weather he wanted, the place he wanted, and when he wanted it. And he said that if I got 3 out of 5 of his requests, that then he would agree that I was demonstrating a psychic ability to influence weather. Okay? And I believe I got 27 out of 33. When the first test I passed with flying colors, and he then didn't get back in touch with me.
I wonder why.
We had a little tug. Yeah, we had to have a tug of war, and to get him to come back around. And then he gave me a second test. So.
Well, you know,
I did a metaphysics forum for 12 years, where I brought together people from all over the world with all perspectives from all different groups, where they would exchange their opinions. And that got me to learn a lot.
Oh, wow.
Why are you interested so much in Planet X?
The reason why I'm interested in it, because I do a talk show, and it mainly it has turned out. You know, I retired. I'm 66. You know, and about a year ago, a friend of mine who's no longer with us, Art Bell, called me up out of the blue, and he says, "What are you still riding your Harley motorcycles?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Are you going to come up?" And I go, "No. My health won't let me. I don't, 'cause I normally go up to Reno and Las Vegas every summer." I said, "I can't do it anymore because I'm fighting a problem." And I said, I can't do it this year. And he goes, "Well, you know what? You got to get back into radio. Don't go back into broadcasting on terrestrial radio. Go into the internet radio." And he talked me into it. And, I found myself back on radio after being retired. And doing a talk show where now I don't have people tell me who my guest has to be. I can choose my own guest, and I can run the show, the way I want to, because, hey, even the advertisers, I cut my last advertiser off because they were dictating to me, who I could have on my show. And I said, no way. So I pay for all the bills out of my own pocket. The reason why I was talking about Planet X, it seemed like the last 2 weeks, because of articles and people like Mary Joyce, writing up articles on her bulletin board website about Planet X has gotten people, talking about it again. And some people are really freaking out, and others are going, oh, well, I'll take it when it comes. I take, like you, I have the approach is, hey, I can go out and get hit by a bus. Of course, where I'm at, there's no buses, but, I could get ran over by a deer or something, I guess. But I take each day as a kid.
You get carried away by a Bigfoot, so we'll put it, how's that?
Don't even mention that, because I can go into about that. A friend of mine who's a medical doctor, we were up in Canada, Canadian Rockies, back in 2002. We ran into something. Either a guy was dressed up as a Bigfoot out in the middle of the Rockies, or we ran into one. I'm not going to even get into it tonight on that. But people...
Yeah, I believe it's possible they exist, and there's people I respect who have had personal encounters with them. So there's something there.
Well, I know.
I wondered if it's interdimensional portal and you're seeing Cro-Magnons or something from the past that are somehow slipping into our time.
It's possible, or it could be, coming, from a different time or from a different dimension. It could be, influenced by aliens. It could be a lot. All I know is back in 2002.
Yeah, it could be from the center of the earth or something, too.
It could be, but you know what? I don't believe the theory of a lot of people, and I got in trouble with the Bigfoot community, especially around my area here. I don't think they're as friendly and fuzzy and warm as some of these people, say they are. In my case, the thing showed aggression, where me and my friend had to run 2 miles through the woods to get back to the car, and we were being chased. And I'm going to remember that to the day I die. So, I can honestly say that. And then the other thing I get...
Well, there's a lot of fear involved with facing an unknown, because you don't know how hostile it can be or how much danger it can do.
Well, especially when you're American citizen, you're not allowed to have a firearm up in Canada, and I wasn't even smart enough. Of course, I don't think bear spray would have done any good if it was a real Bigfoot, spraying it. I could say, "I'm sorry, guy," but hey, it's an experience I don't ever want to go through again. I can honestly tell you this, Walt: I have not gone camping. I have not been in the woods since that happened. It did enough damage to me emotionally that I have lost the interest. And I grew up in a family every weekend, when I was a kid, all the way I have 8 kids in my marriage.
Do you think Bigfoot could be related to what's called the 411 mystery, which is the vanishings of people from national parks?
I do think it could be tied into it, because it's been too many people that have vanished in the parks. And I've actually, we've talked about that and with guests on the show extensively. It's just been too many weird things have happened where people have gone in. There's going to be a certain amount of people go into the park system, right? It's going to drop over dead with a heart attack. They're going to fall off a cliff. They're going to fall in a hole.
Well, there'd be a body or clothing or campsite, something.
Yeah, but
most of the 411s are just a total vanishing.
And then some of them, like one case where it was a little boy, it turned out at a campsite. Within a matter of a minute, his parents, taking their eye off him, he disappears. He's found about 15 miles away on a mountainside.
That sounds more like an ET abduction.
Oh yeah, that there's no way a little 5-year-old can cross Alder River, climb up a mountain, and do all that. No way. Yeah, I mean, something did that.
Yeah.
Now I will say this: I do think
Thunderbird.
And then I get the people on
There's a lot out there. There's a lot out there, both known and unknown. We don't inhabit as much of our planet as people think we do. Most of our planet is uninhabited.
Oh, yeah.
People have this idea of like wall-to-wall, coast-to-coast, we're populated and maybe the desert's empty, right? But that's not the case. I mean, the woodlands are empty, the deserts are empty. There are vast expanses even between cities that are empty. I am from South Florida, and it is basically from southeast Florida, and it's basically becoming one continuous city from Jacksonville all the way to Key West, right? And that gives you an impression of full coverage by humanity. But you go 10 miles inland, or 15 miles now, and all of a sudden you're in an uninhabited woods again. Huh?
Yeah, that's the interesting part. And then we think we know everything that's in the ocean, but almost every week, on the news they're saying, oh, we found this new thing that we didn't even know it existed, or it should have died off a million years ago. Here it washed ashore. I mean, it's always something new turning up, which makes you really think, that, hey, there could be Bigfoot or something similar to it, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I believe that the new radar, which can scan into the Earth, has told us that there are oceans inside our planet that are as big as our surface oceans. So it is possible that there are caves underwater to connect some of these bodies of water, and every now and then something that lives in that environment makes it into our environment. Same thing possible with some of the bigger cave or cavern systems of our Earth that are above, well, I was going to say above ground, but are air-based rather than water-based.
Well, yeah, I also look at, this Earth has probably been rebooted a few times. And when I mentioned that one night, a couple of weeks ago, somebody called me up afterwards and told me I was a nutcase. But, you go to Sphinx, the backside of it has, wear on it. They came to the conclusion, that was done from an ocean, and that puts it before, man. So it tells me that was created before humans were created. So, I do think we're on a 1 or number 2 reboot or number 3 reboot on this Earth. And, the standard view is this is the 5th civilization. Yeah, and it goes so far, and then all of a sudden, poof, the Earth cleanses itself. I mean, I feel bad because we abuse this planet like you wouldn't believe. I mean, if you abused a human like we abuse this Earth, you'd be in prison for the rest of your life. Yeah. Yeah, well, so we live like locusts. There is a view that the planet is a yoke, and it is meant to nourish us, and it's like an infinite source, and we can just plunder it without regard. There are people who believe that. I believe that overpopulation is a problem, and that it is reflected in unemployment and homelessness and crime. Right? Oh, yeah. And that we need to balance you need to balance consumption with renewal. Right? And where I live in Virginia, they have done a good job, or at least tried to do that with the use of wood, okay? Where they plant what they remove, so that there's a cycle. But unfortunately, they have, in the past 10 years or so, they changed their cut by 5 years. Oh, wow. Hey, in other words, before they used to allow the trees, I think 10 or 15 years, or 15 or 20 years, and they reduced that by 5 years. And I became aware of it because I was working with carpenters, and they started complaining that the quality of the wood was changing. Oh, yeah. Because it wasn't being given the time. Yeah. Hey, our time is almost up. Hey, I do appreciate you coming on. Now, again, where can they find your book, the name of your book, and if you've got how can they find you on Facebook? And if you have a website, go ahead and plug it, Walt. All right. I have a bunch of books. The two main ones is a series called The Life of Christos, and the other one is a single book called The Thought of Christos. They're both available on Amazon. And you can find me just by searching for Walt, which is Jualt. It's like Juan, but Walt. And that's it in a nutshell. I have a Facebook site for The Life of Christos. So if you search for that, that'll take you there. And I've used the Facebook photo albums to have one that links to previous radio interviews, one that shows different newspaper articles, one with my Waltisms or wit and wisdom, quick sayings, and another one with links to where my books can be purchased. Oh, wow. Well, hey, I want to appreciate you coming on the show tonight, and if you'd like to come back on again in the next couple months, I'd more happy we can go into more discussions. Oh yeah, I'd love to. If I'm still alive. I'm dealing with my own health issue as well. Okay, sorry to hear that. I mean, the older you get, it seems like you...
No, I've had a good life. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. If I'm still around.
Yeah, that's what I say.
To.
Well, you know what I always tell people, if I get up in the morning and I know where my pants are and my car keys, I'm good to go. If I don't get up in the morning, then, hey, well, I had a good life. Hey, Walt, thank you for being on Night Dreams. I really appreciate you, being a guest on the show.
Certainly, and I'll look forward to looking at the show at your archives.
Okay, sir. You have a good evening, and thank you again.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, well, we talked a little bit about Planet X. We talked about, the super volcano in Yellowstone, the things that's going on there. It's kind of scary there, too. I mean, a lot of things can really affect our planet. Well, what can I say? Things happen, and all we have to do is just take one day at a time. Next, we'll have Liz on, and then I'm also going to have my weekend host, Michael W. Hall, will be on the second hour. Again, we're going to be talking to Liz about her new book about monsters and stuff like that.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. And thank you.
Okay, I'm going to play a little bit of music while I get her online. So we will be back in, just a short time. A little bit of lightning, a little bit of thunder. Now I'm going to call up and get Liz on the show so we can talk about her new book. A second in the series of, I believe, 5. But I could be wrong on that because sometimes I am. Let's see if we can get her on here.
Hello?
Well, hi, Liz. How you doing?
I'm good.
Well, you got the one and only Gary on Night Dreams Talk Radio. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Well, how's the weather in your state right now? I mean, the temperatures and stuff like that?
It is absolutely beautiful tonight. It's 70 degrees, no wind. It's beautiful.
I like nice weather. I wish we could have nice weather like that 12 months out of the year. Well, let's take it back. Well, how about 11 months out of the year? I would sacrifice 1 month to have 11 good months. I could live with some crappy weather.
I could live with that, too.
Boy, you just keep, amazing me. You cranked out the second book and now a third book all so fast. Wow. You got energy. You got more than I have. Do you take Geritol by any chance?
No.
Don't do it. It doesn't do any good.
I've had the series done for a while. It was just a matter of getting it published and getting it out. So I'm on the final edit of the third book, and hopefully in the next week or so it will be available too.
Oh, wow. Well, let's talk a little bit of, I got to warn you, my weekend host, the Paranormal Lawyer, will be coming on here in about 3 minutes, and we're going to both, just pull your brain out tonight. Because we're into monsters, I guess, things like that. But I got to ask you, what got you writing this type of book in the first place, or these series of books? What got you into it?
Well, the biggest thing is I have some health issues, and I had this really bad flare of pain. So basically, I was on the couch. And I needed something to do. I needed something that would make me feel like I had some use or purpose. And in the meantime, everything at that point was Bigfoot. You know, all the different Discovery Channels and Travel Channels, everything was Bigfoot. So I had looked up if there were any sightings in my area, and there were. And one of them was actually on the military base. And about 2 weeks after I had read about that particular sighting, the trail that the sighting took place on was closed, citing safety concerns after a black bear sighting. So that just screamed military government cover-up. Bigfoot is being hidden on the military base, and that's where the idea came from.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, okay, you got the ideas of Bigfoot and all these little creepy monsters and stuff like that. I got to ask you a question. Were you a big sci-fi and horror flick child when you grew up?
I grew up watching everything sci-fi. That was the big thing in my house. It was Star Wars, Star Trek, the X-Files. I still love the X-Files. Everything related to paranormal, whether it was ghosts or monsters or whatever it was. That was just something that my entire family was interested in.
Well, you know, it's funny. My family, when I grew up, you know, my father was more into like watching things like World War II, the Korean War type thing on TV. I discovered when I was a little kid, you know, like these spaceship movies where, you know, the people were flying out, you know, in these cigars. It's supposed to be spaceships, you know, that looked like a butane lighter in the back, you know, propelling it out to space, you know. And, you know, the spaceships must have weighed, I don't know how many tons, because, I mean, they use big steel and huge rivets together, you know, hold it together and stuff like that. But I got intrigued in, you know, the movies that were, I always classify them so bad that they are good. And I haven't stopped.
I love those movies. The Sci-Fi Channel, especially, yes, I love the bad sci-fi movies that are so bad they are good. The ones that you predict, okay, that one's dying next. That's the one who's going to get eaten next because they're just being annoying. And you know who it is that's going to be picked off down the line.
Well, the dumb blonde always seems to get eaten by the crocodile on sci-fi. But do you have Comet? Oh, hey, my guest is calling right now. I'm going to add him on. Okay, Michael, are you there? Michael, are you there? Hopefully you're there, Michael. I hope you.
Hello, Gary. It's Michael Hall calling in.
Okay, and you can hear me. You can hear me this time.
I can hear you, Gary.
Okay, we're doing good. We got Liz on here. She's writing a series of books about my favorite subject. No, not my ex-wife, which was a monster, but she's writing, you know, about what happened on a military base, all the little creepy things like caterpillars, and across, if I remember right, the road, and one of the cops deputies gets all covered with slime.
Wow.
Yeah. The giant slug that he decides to poke with a stick, which is just not the smartest thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, never poke a giant slug with a stick. I would never do that.
Well, you should know if you step on one, what happens when you step on one.
Yeah, living up here in the Pacific Northwest, we all know what happens when you try to step on a slug. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, he gets slug guts all over everywhere. Slimy thing. And don't pour salt on him either. But this deputy wasn't very smart. So why don't you tell a little bit about that out of your book, too, because I brought that up.
Yeah, there are a lot of serious parts in them, but I definitely try to throw in some of the comedy and some of the things that you just when they happen, you start laughing. That same deputy gets into a food fight with a poltergeist, along with the federal agent who is in charge of the entire program that caused this whole catastrophe to happen. It does not end well for them.
Well, I guess they get probably covered with something, right?
The thing empties everything in the kitchen at them. It even opens the refrigerator and starts throwing leftovers at them.
Oh, wow. I mean, oh, boy. In my case, I would be, ugh. So, wow. Anyway, Michael, a little bit about her. I mean, she used to be, a paramedic, go out on an ambulance or whatever and help people,
Yeah.
And then she was a deputy sheriff. And now she's retired because of medical issues. And she started writing a series of books. And I mean, I give this girl a lot of credit, not just because she shares all my posts for our network on Facebook. She's just, a cool person and writes cool books because you know what? I've never asked you this, Michael. Are you into like sci-fi movies and the type that are so bad that you have to watch them because they're good?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the old ones, where they had these were the B studios that did not have the large budgets, but you know what? They had the guts to go out and produce sci-fi shows well before the genre got popular. And, of course, you're not talking teenage, blondes from the outer galaxy, whatever characters and names they came up with, they were just outrageous, and they're so campy.
Well, there's something. I was watching one today, I have to admit, okay? It's hot here today. And I did some running around today, but a couple hours before the show, I started watching, I started watching Comet Network, and they were showing this old, space show, where the astronauts were, going to rescue the other astronauts that disappeared on this planet that appears and disappears and appears and disappears, right? And I was looking, I was actually laughing my ass off, pardon my expression, because, the spaceship they're on, it was wobbly, you could see the string holding it, very poor effects. And then, like the old lighters, butane lighters, you used to fill up, with a can and fill them up.
Yeah.
Okay. It looked like it was propelling it, like somebody had a Bic lighter, one of the old ones, it had butane, and it was putting out that little flame, on the back where you want to light a cigarette off of it. And then, here's inside their spaceship, right? The gauges are like 6 inches around or 12 inches around for the, the pressure, the whatever, their fuel and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And here's the metal of the spaceship's held together. It's like these 2-inch rivets everywhere. And I'm looking at this. Wow, how could that thing ever got off the planet? Let alone they tried. I mean, let's face it. I mean, it was weird, but it was really bad. And then they get on this other planet, right? And here's this planet that is controlled by, they had mutants there, and they were trying to keep the mutants from, entering into the city because they hated each other. I watched the movie, and at the end of it, they didn't even have any sex scenes in it. It was so bad. I mean, I watched it, and I go to the end. Actually, I don't even remember what happened the last 10 minutes because guess what I did? I fell asleep.
Good for you. It's hot enough. You got to take a nap whenever you can here. Hey, I have a great story about this that Liz might like. As a lot of folks know, my brother was a costume designer in Hollywood for 35 years. And, of course, he worked on a lot of the old movies. He did 3 of the original Star Trek films. But one of the series that he worked on was Battlestar Galactica. Remember that old time? It wasn't old time, but, kind of like new television series that they had with Gil Gerard.
Well, didn't they have Lauren Green in it?
Yes,
yeah.
Very good memory on that. Can you imagine having Lauren Green from Bonanza in a spaceship? It was hilarious, but it was well done, I thought, for the time anyway. This was a Universal Studios production. But my brother tells me this story that he was in charge of stuffing this little monkey, actual real chimpanzee, into the Daggett suit. You remember that little kind of like a mechanical pet that they had on board this ship? Yeah, they called it a Daggett.
Yes, I do.
And you know, they had a handler, of course, you know, that was in charge of all the animals and stuff. But my brother, being the costumer, was given the task of costuming this really cool, he says, monkey, and getting them in and out of it every day when they were doing the scene shoots. So I thought that was hilarious, and that's another one of those ideas where you do with what you got.
But I sure hate to be the one getting them out of that suit at the end of the day, because you know what?
Yes.
They're not monkeys. You can't really potty train them too good, even with a diaper.
Oh, yeah, they definitely had a diaper on the guy, and they couldn't keep him in the costume. You know, there's all sorts of, you know, rules and regulations in Hollywood for shooting with animals and children and all that stuff. But I can't imagine someone writing that into the script and then some production manager guy has to figure out how to actually pull it off without CGI back in those days and all that stuff.
Well, you know what? I hate to say it. I hate the Midget Association. I'm surprised they didn't get. I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble for that. I was going to say, I'm surprised they didn't get sued or boycotted.
Oh, and my brother was also working with one or two dwarfs that were famous Hollywood actors, actually, and they would be stuffed into little R2-D2 kind of, you know, robots and different kinds of things that just totally would fool the public in what was happening inside this costume, because, you know, obviously a normal sized person or even a small person would not be able to even fit in these things. So I think he told me he just saw just a little bit about anything that happened in Hollywood from the inside as a costumer's angle.
Oh, wow. And did he design some of these really sexist outfits, too, that these women were wearing in the 80s and 70s and stuff like that? I watched another movie here, I think, last night. I mean, you know, the lady looked like she was a bodybuilder, and, you know, she's running a band of these, people, you know, that were trying to take over the planet after the president died. It was real weird. That movie was made in 1983. That's the only thing I remember about that movie. At the very end, the credits of the movie, it was that bad. Well,
listen, I want to hear more about Liz's book. And I want to hear some stories from her, because these are fascinating tales that she's able to tell us out here.
Now, do you still hold your police commission at all or anything like that? Or did you have to surrender that? I know some jurisdictions...
When I medically retired, I had to surrender it.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about Michael being arrested.
No, no, he's safe.
Okay.
I'll try to watch my tongue.
Okay. So ask her questions too. I mean, she is one cool person. I gotten to know her for the longest period of time. I mean, and I'm really intrigued that, about her first book. She sent me a copy. I can't wait to read it out. Is that the second copy or the second book you sent me on?
It's the second book that I'm sending you, yes.
Oh, boy, I can't wait to get it, because that gives me something to read. I'm tired of getting all these books on, it's not a day. I'm not joking. I get a book almost every day on Bigfoot from somebody who wants to be on the show. I got a whole big box full of books on Bigfoot.
Well, Bigfoot actually is in the second book quite a bit, but there's kind of two versions. It gets a little more in depth into what happened to the sheriff when she was attacked. So, there's that very aggressive one was responsible for her attack almost a year prior to her taking over as sheriff. But then there's this other one that keeps showing up that is more benign and almost following her.
Okay.
So there's kind of that
Well, maybe the Bigfoot has a crush on her.
There's a reason he's doing it. There is an actual reason he's doing it. I don't want to give that part of it away because that's kind of important.
But your books are full of like little creepy monsters and little slimy things, if I remember right. At least your first book was from when we, talked about it in the past.
In the 5-book series, I have between 30 and 35 different creatures, entities, things that create some kind of paranormal activity in the 5-book series.
Oh, wow. Now, hey, Michael, she does have some paranormal things going on her property, and I thought I want to share it if she doesn't mind. One is her bedroom door opens and slams. That's one. Two, her refrigerator opens and closes, if I remember right, the door. And and then the one I find really intriguing, she was out in her on her property, and she noticed like this young kid in a hoodie walking towards her, on her property, and all of a sudden it vanishes, like it's now not there. And if you can explain a little bit to Michael on that one, that's the one I find really intriguing.
I've heard Gary talk about this story, and I'm totally fascinated, Liz, with this idea that we always think about ghosts being historical figures or dressed in old clothing, that kind of. And here is a ghost dressed in a hoodie.
Well, it's not that it was dressed in a hoodie. I say it looked like it was in like a hoodie and cargo pants because that's the first impression that I got from it. Because I thought it was the neighbor kid coming up to get like a ball or something that my son had said for him to come up and get. And when I went to check and, see what the kid wanted, there was no one there. I had been feeding my horses and had seen this figure walk in the space between our house and our well house and out of sight. And there was no other way for him to get out except to walk back the way he came in. And I kept looking, kept my eye on that area. And when I went to check, there was no sign of anyone being there. There were no footprints. There were no marks in the grass. There was absolutely nothing there.
Wow. Was this apparition, some of them have been reported to just almost kind of glide, and you don't really see them walk or their feet or the legs even. Was this something that looked like a full-figured apparition to you?
It looked like someone walking. I thought it was the neighbor kid wearing black hoodie, black cargo pants, and walking through.
Wow, that's scary.
Well, I was thinking, remember two things, shape shifter could be one, not necessarily a ghost, or it came from another dimension, or maybe it was somebody, because I asked her at the time, like, who owned the property before she was there, because maybe, it could be a ghostly figure, or remember the Jeeper Creeper movies? Maybe it was one of those creatures disguising itself as a human. So she would have went up to him, maybe this thing would have opened up its mouth, which would have had great big fangs on it, and swallowed her or something.
Well, no, if it was Jeepers Creepers, it would have, stolen my eyes or something, We've got to get that right.
Or
would have stolen whatever part it needed.
Yeah, your skin and all that stuff. That'd be icky. But I find that kind of intriguing, though. You're sitting there and you're out of the corner of your eye, and you look and you see somebody coming towards you or coming that way, and then all of a sudden they're not there. And if I remember right, you even checked for footprints, and wasn't it kind of wet or muddy or something? If I remember right, when we talked. It
had been raining, and there had been some yard work done where this person had walked through, and there was absolutely no sign of footprints. It was clay mud, so there should have been footprints.
Yeah, and all your years in law enforcement too. That would have intrigued me. I mean, that there was something there. I mean, I had very short 2 years of law enforcement experience, but it would have really, got my mind going like, well, where's the footprints? Then I would start looking at the grass or whatever, if it's been mashed down from the shoes and all that stuff. I mean, for something that totally just vanished like that. Now, was this before you wrote your first book or after or in between or what?
This was years before I wrote the books. I actually wrote the first book in September of 2016, and I finished the 5th book in the series in August of 2017.
Wow.
So a 5-book series in 11 months.
That is a lot. I mean, I know people I've had on the show. It took me. One guy, it took him a couple years to write a book on vampires. So I mean, do you when you're sleeping at night, are you thinking about a chapter you need to write or anything like that? Does it come to you in the middle of the night, or how does it come to you?
Sometimes it does. I write in a very strange way compared to most people. Most people sit down, they plan everything out, they have characters, they have everything laid out exactly the way they want it. And for me, I just make it up as I go along. I don't always know, even from chapter to chapter, what's going to happen next. And when there's a conversation, I type basically at the speed of a conversation. So, if there's 12 pages of conversation, then it's going to be 12 pages of typing at conversation speed.
Interesting.
Liz, do you, as a writer, obviously you've gotten, at this point, you found the voice that you use, in your writing. Does that voice get you to what I call the zone, where you're just you're just going and your thoughts are flowing, you're putting it down on paper, and you don't exactly know where you're going to go next, and all of a sudden something leads you in a direction when you're telling a story?
That, and I actually have finished the first book of the prequel series also, so that's going to be a little interesting.
Oh, I love prequels, by the way, because from what I can gather, what you do is you condense all of the things that you know about these characters for the future, and you kind of bring it back so people can understand why they are the way they are. That's a fascinating idea. Writing the prequel after, of course, everything else is already in stone and written in stone.
Right.
Wow.
And the prequel series is a lot more of exactly of how each character became what they are for the first series.
Now, I got to ask you a question. You took an initiative to, self-publish the series?
Right.
Okay. I mean, was that kind of scary for people out there who, are thinking about doing self-publishing? I mean, was it a hard decision to make? I mean, were you nervous about it? I mean, how's the book doing at this point? Is it starting to take hold now? Are you getting orders and all that stuff?
I am getting orders. The first book, I went through a company. The publisher is actually a self-published branch of Simon & Schuster. So for the first book, I had instruction on how things needed to be and the process, and learned how to do everything. If I did not have that, I don't think I would have proceeded to do
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit there. Were you able to hear there, Michael?
I heard most of that for sure. But I do have another question to follow up on, because I always like to ask authors like Liz how they come up with the names of their characters, and whether these are kind of names that have you've run across, in your entire career, in law enforcement or whatever. But the main character's name, right? Lindsay Gold. Is that something that means something to you personally?
It does, and I'm not sure. I actually am not sure anyone in my family has caught on to the name yet. Lindsay was my Lindsay was my grandfather's name, and Goldie was my grandmother's name.
Oh,
and that
cool.
became Lindsay Gold. And really, that's the one name that means something. The rest is just kind of, they just felt right when I hit that name.
Well, you've got Agent Wren Gold, W-R-E-N Gold.
Yes.
Is there any significance in the term Wren or the name Wren?
There really isn't. I wanted something different. And I also knew that at some point I needed that name to be this horrible, ostentatious something. So it became Renfield when his mother shows up in book 3, which he absolutely hates. And so, yeah.
Oh, wow.
How do you come up with the composite of your characters? Obviously, a lot of people write from experience. Is this something you've put together from the people you've run across in your law enforcement profession, maybe?
A lot of the police officers, yes, there's definitely qualities in there from people that I've worked with, or things that I would do or definitely would not do in the case of one particular deputy that always gets in trouble. But the one thing that I had to put in there was there are 2 deputies named Bob. So you have Big Bob and Little Bob. And I've worked in 2 departments where we've had that happen, where multiple people have had the same name. So we've had, Little and Big, whoever, just so we could differentiate between the 2.
Yeah, and what happened if you had 4 Bobs? Well, you can say Big Bob, Little Bob, in between Bob, and I don't know Bob. We actually had a department that had 3 bills out of like 5 people. It's like, how does this happen? I'm not going to say a joke about inbreeding, but I mean,
yeah, it's like, how does this happen? Our departments aren't that large. How does this happen?
Now, you're no longer with the department. You took a medical retirement, if I remember right, or disability?
Yes.
Now, have you been in touch with any of the previous law enforcement people that you knew? And I'm sure they know you're writing books. Has any of them come up and said, hey, that sounds like me?
No. I didn't want any one character to be specifically based on any one person. That's just not. So you didn't. There's too much risk with that.
No, so you didn't work with somebody in the sheriff's department that would have took a stick to a slug and poked it and get all covered with slime from head to toe, and then have to go back to the station house.
No, thankfully.
But,
it is Missouri, so we have had some cases where it's literally covered in so much mud or something, you go to the car wash and hose yourself off before you go on back to the department or even try to find a clean uniform.
Yeah. Now, did you kind of like work your ex-husband into it without realizing it on any of them? I mean, I mean, if I wrote a book, I could certainly write about my ex-wife. It would be a couple chapters right there. I can tell you that. You know, like the time I saw a UFO or thought I saw a UFO, I kind of wish she would have been abducted. But you know, they probably they beamed down at her and realized, hey, no way, we're going to take this lady on our spaceship.
You know, I kind of made a point to not have him involved at all in anything. Yeah, the ex-husband is not involved in anything that I've written.
Okay. Well, some people would have, you know, kind of like, you know, I won't say what I was going to say. But I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, people do, you know, use their ex-spouse or their wife or their current kids, and they kind of make a plot about their, you know, I mean, you know, I could write a good book about my story life of my family, and I guarantee you it would make it on a cable channel like, oh, God. I mean, that's what they could call the show, oh, God.
Yeah, I have some relatives in my family in the past that definitely would fit that, including bootleggers who took moonshine to Joplin and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, okay, let's get back for the audience going to get into this a little bit. Okay, something was going on in this military base, something to do, and, you know, just, you know, if you can just tell us a little bit, you know, as a teaser to get people wanting to, you know, grab your book and read it. I mean, you know, without giving the plot away. You don't give the plot away, but just enough where they go, oh, man, I got to get this book.
Basically, the entire series comes down to there was and continues to be a secret program on the base where all of these creatures, monsters, whatever you want to call them, are housed, researched, secured for safety, for their own safety, for the safety of others. And something happens to cause a catastrophic failure. So all of these things that were safely kept away without anyone knowing are now loose in the county. And the sheriff, having just taken over, is now dealing with this on top of normal duties of sheriff, and is finding out her husband is the one who was in charge of it, which she didn't know because, of course, everything being classified, she had no knowledge of it and what he actually did.
Wow, that right there, you know, that kind of reminds me of you can make a movie, right? The scientist, right, is discovered a way to bring back whatever, you know, aliens to Earth, and when he does it, they start destroying Earth, and then the person who's actually fighting against it was the person's spouse. I mean, you know, that's kind of interesting right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I try to make a point of there's not really aliens, but that kind of led to my Facebook question involving the prequel series. You know, if you have the perfect couch that is absolutely perfect, it's, you know, one you can't ever replace. And it is now covered in blue alien snot and partially chewed pizza. Do you have it cleaned, or do you have it replaced, or try to replace it? Either way, it's at government expense, but, you know, what do you do with it?
Alien or a monster snot?
Blue alien snot and partially chewed pizza. Yeah.
Well, I guarantee you, in my case, it'd be really good. I need to lose weight, so I'd probably keep it around because I would probably not want to eat anything at night. So when I'm watching all these sci-fi shows, I'm not going to sneak out, you know, tiptoe on my tulips going into the kitchen to get my bowl of ice cream, which the doctor said I can't have, but I don't tell anybody I do it. And then, you know, I get my bottle of Coke, and then, you know, I make popcorn, and this, you know, my whole life revolves. I sleep about 2-3 hours a day. So, I mean, you know, my life begins after the show, and I start, watching all these sci-fi. So that'd be cleaning off the snot and stuff. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's either way government expense. Either the government is going to be responsible for cleaning it, replacing it, or covering it. You know, which one is it going to be?
Well, I would live with it because I need to lose weight. But I don't know. What would you do, Michael? Would you have the government replace it at their expense, or would you try to clean it?
You know, I got bumped off there, so I just joined the conversation back again.
Okay.
So I didn't hear.
Okay.
I didn't hear the punchline there.
Alien snot on the couch. Green alien snot. Would you?
If you're the absolute perfect cat in blue alien snot and partially chewed pizza, do you have the government clean it or replace it?
Oh man, you know what? Being a ufologist myself and wanting to preserve the evidence, I would do everything I possibly could to just grab that stuff and run with it and then parcel it out as many pieces I possibly could to different labs to get the thing analyzed, because obviously if you put it in one place, it's going to disappear and you'll never see it again. Now, I do have a question, though, Liz, about this whole idea, you know, of these animals or cryptids or whatever, you know, is involved with this military experiment. Did you do a lot of research and or base some of those topics on the Dulce, New Mexico, you know, kind of rumors about the idea that there are biological experiments, crosses between humans and animals, and those things kept down on the 7th level, supposedly, of Dulce?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm in Missouri, so we have Fort Leonard Wood. And there are so many rumors about Fort Leonard Wood actually having, you know, the underground bunkers and all that kind of stuff, and it's surrounded by national forests. So I just kind of ran with that.
Wonderful. Oh, you know, and there you go. You've got the whole idea of national forests surrounding a military base and national forests. When David Paulides' 411 series, the missing, you know, people around the United States are totally missing from those national and state forests. I think that's a great combination, military and national forests right there.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, did you hear the previous guest tonight at all, Michael? We did touch about the missing of the national forest for a little bit on that show.
Oh, yes. No, I wasn't. I was at the other paranormal lawyer meeting, so I missed it.
Yeah. But, you know, I that's one thing. You know, I think it takes somebody that has a great imagination and, you know, to sit there, you know, it's a big difference between watching sci-fi and horror type movies and, you know, all these B flicks, but to sit down and be able to write it down and you know, I could never do it. And I'm amazed that, you know, every time I talk to Liz, you know, that she keeps moving forward with it. And I'm so proud of this gal.
Well, definitely. And matter of fact, Liz, I don't know what motivates you to put so much effort, you know, into doing that, because I know what it takes to actually begin a project, you know, and stick with it until it gets to an ending point. Are you the kind of writer that you just have to write?
Yeah, the strange thing is I had never written anything until I started the book series in 2016. So I'm still kind of new with this.
But what caused you in 2016 to all of a sudden decide you wanted to write, you know, a book about what you did about monsters and, you know, Bigfoot and the military base and the forest and all that stuff? There had to be something that triggered it. I mean, you know, you have to understand too, Michael, she has some weird things going on in her house, like the bedroom door opening and closing. And
right.
and she'd be in the front room, and, you know, if I remember right, the refrigerator opens and slams shut, and little weird things like that. So, I mean, she's living with something in her house.
I also have a shepherd's lantern in my living room that will spin for no apparent reason, it was swinging in a circle. So that's a mystery, too.
This sounds like one of those vortexes that you can run across.
Realize that, you know.
Yeah.
Now, is any of the stuff that's been going on in your house, is that what got you interested in writing? I mean, you know, if that stuff wasn't happening, like, you know, the door slamming and all that other stuff, would you still wrote the books? I mean, did that have anything to do to influence you?
I think I probably would have still wrote the book. What really got me was the coincidence between the story of the encounter on the base with Bigfoot and 2 weeks later the trail where the encounter had taken place being closed due to a black bear sighting. You know, that I just started laughing. It's like, that's it. That's yeah, they're hiding Bigfoot, okay. You know.
Well, maybe they are.
Very well could have been actually a bear on the trail, and they, you know, I'm not saying that they closed it because of Bigfoot. I'm saying, you know, it just that coincidence when I read it compared to, you know, the bear sighting just was perfect.
Well, okay, how long were you a deputy in your county?
I worked law enforcement in my county for. Okay, well, I started in 2000 in the county I live in, and I've worked in different agencies in 3 counties. Okay. And retired officially in 2016.
Well, while you were a deputy in that county and in a couple other counties in law enforcement, did you ever get much reports of Bigfoot in the area, or, you know, alien UFO reports or stuff like that?
There were. I didn't take any reports of it, but at different times, I know that there have been calls that have come in for unknown animals that could not. There was a Bigfoot sighting just outside of Waynesville, which is the county seat. It was literally standing on the center line of the main road leading in and out of town, with cars passing both ways. That was years before I came to the area and started law enforcement. With military base, we always have people, oh, there's a UFO, I'm seeing strange lights, when it usually is actually flares being dropped or, you know, some kind of night maneuver taking place.
Okay, I was just trying to figure if any of that, you know, instilled something in you to, you know, sit down and start writing the books. Now, again, where are your books available at? How can they find them? Do you have a website, your Facebook, all that stuff? Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find it?
All of the books are available on Amazon. I also have a website that will give you links to where you can purchase besides just Amazon. The website is lizreaderbooks.com.
And can they also contact you on Facebook to order it too that way and make contact that way?
They can absolutely find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm pretty much everywhere. And link to all of my social media.
Wow, you need to write us, after this done, you need to write a series about UFOs, doesn't she, Michael?
Well, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Especially with all of the strange things happening in and around Fort Leonard Wood. My gosh.
Could you imagine an alien coming out of a spaceship that looks like a slimy caterpillar, you know? And so the military gets out, right? And they're running out there with their Jeeps and Humvees and all this stuff, right? And they start shooting at this big giant slug, and they get all covered with slug juice. And then they disappear because it has that stuff in it that dissolves whatever it gets onto.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. By the way, I understand that Liz is doing an illustrated guide to her book series. I was going to ask her about that.
That is definitely in the plans and in the works. I'm taking all of the creature descriptions of all the different encounters in the first series. Those are all being written up along with the case file numbers that are assigned to each one of them. And I'm working with an amazing illustrator who will be doing the actual illustrations for each one of those.
Oh, wow. So, there's going to be 5 books in the series, right? Or more?
Yes. 5 books in the series.
Okay. And now number 3 is going to be coming out, what, shortly?
Probably in the next week.
Oh, wow.
And it is titled 51 Monsters. And I went with that one because not only are they encountering some things that are, definitely monstrous creatures that, the only goal is to kill, but the sheriff has to deal with her mother-in-law, and that might be the biggest monster she has to deal with.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, have you given the thought of, are you going to do another series of books of some sort after these are all done? I mean, are you going to keep writing?
I'm doing the prequel series, which will probably be 5 books also. And then I actually have one planned that is not related and not sci-fi, that is, how do I explain this? Basically, these women had gone to school, friends, but their career paths are completely different. You have a doctor, a psychiatrist, a preacher, a gold digger, a hitman, a photographer. You have this group of women who are just completely different, and they kind of work together on different things and help each other out, and yeah.
Wow, boy. I mean, and you have one child, so I mean, that this must consume. I know one thing, Michael. She's up late because there's a 2-hour time difference between our time and her time. So I'll be up late because I don't go to bed normally till, well, maybe 3 o'clock, and then I have to get up again at 4:30, and then I go back to bed from 7 o'clock to 9. And she always seems to be on Facebook.
Yeah, I never sleep. That's yeah. I'm happy if I manage to get 4 hours sleep. I'm happy. Wow,
the energy of somebody so young. She's a young kid, you know that.
No, there is no energy. It's just caffeine and sarcasm that drives me through it.
Okay, I really am glad you came on the show with such short notice. It all came down to the guest I had on there. I had him booked for 2 hours, but then he said he only had about an hour of content. So I was, and it was a great 1 hour show. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed the guest. It actually turned out way, way better than I thought. But I mean, I started panicking because I couldn't talk for an hour or two after him. I mean, you can only talk so much about, the same thing over and over and over again,
Yeah, I get it. Call me anytime.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you go. Again, tell everybody the name of each book, that the ones that are available now, the ones that's going to be available, and again, they are available on Amazon. You can find her on Facebook and all these other places. Hey, she even does really nice jewelry, so you need to take a look at her website. I mean, this lady is very talented. But, to sit down and write all these books in that short a time, I don't know how she can do it, other than she has a lot more energy than she's willing to admit.
It's the total lack of sleep. That's what drives it.
Now we figured it out, Michael, how she's come up with all these monsters. She's actually not getting enough sleep, so she's deprived of sleep. So she's getting all these little thoughts of these creatures floating around, and she's writing it down.
Well, and I think the close proximity to Fort Leonard Wood might have something to do with all of this. If there's a vortex going on there, messing with her her mind and giving her these downloads, I mean, that's kind of what happens sometimes to writers. I know that. You wake up in the middle of the night and you just can't sleep. You have to write it down.
Or something.
That does happen.
Yeah, but you know what I find interesting, too, seriously, is I still am so, how can I say it, something that's going on her property. And that gets me where you see a young kid walking on the property and then all of a sudden disappears and there's no proof that he walked there. I mean, when you go check it out, that right there, I'd be kind of eerie on my property because did somebody come through another time, a portal, or something? That's why I think I asked her once before if there was any kids at that age, roughly what she thought he was, that maybe went missing, and that is still, walking around. And maybe that same person, I hate to say it, Liz, could be the one that's opening the refrigerator and closing it and saying, hey, there's no Kentucky Fried Chicken in here. What's going on with this lady? Slams your refrigerator closed, and then, again with your bedroom and stuff like that, the door opening and closing. And if I remember right, you told me that was really hard for that door to do that, to open and close.
It was. There's actually at the time a coat rack on the door, so it made it really hard to open and close. And I thought my husband had woke up and come out of the bedroom and closed the door behind him. He heard it and thought I opened the door and had gone into the bedroom and woke him up. So that was something we never figured out because we each know the other, we didn't do it, so something did.
Well, how about in your refrigerator? What, the door in the refrigerator open and slam shut? I mean, did anything in the refrigerator get rearranged or anything, or?
Nothing gets moved. You just hear it open, and within seconds, hear it close again. And the first couple of times, I thought I was losing my mind by hearing this, but the last few times, the dog that has been next to me has looked toward the kitchen, and he heard it too. So I know it's not just me.
Oh, wow. Well, did you have beer in your refrigerator?
No beer.
That's why. I bet if you would have had some cans of beer in there or bottles of beer in there, you would have went back and checked and found a couple of them missing.
Yeah.
And it probably could have been that kid that's wearing that hoodie and those cargo pants. It could actually somehow be. I mean, did you buy your house intact or did you have it built?
No, we bought it intact.
Okay, and how many previous owners had that house before you got it?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you. And I know at one point there was an old house here on the property that was demolished. So, it's been established as a residential property for a very long time.
Okay, so it could be an entity from, a previous owner or again before even the house was built. It's like when I grew up in Seattle, a lot of people don't realize parts of Seattle, actually had even little farms on some of the streets. When I grew up, I was born in 1952. That's the year they discovered the wagon wheel. The house next to my parents' house, which was built in 1952, believe it or not, so it was the same age as me. The property next to us, the person hung himself in the shed, was he had like a couple acres right here in near West Seattle. That was a farm yet. He had goats and he had all that stuff there. That tells you how, cities have changed. But, I mean, all that disappeared after he hung himself. But, the people who, bought the house because they built a new house on the property, would always claim that, come over and tell us that the house was haunted, and they couldn't figure out why, because it was a new house. And then one day, my older brother, told the people, hey, the previous owner owned the property. He hung himself in the shed. So that could have been the ghosts that they were, experiencing on their house, or in their house and on the property.
Yeah, and this particular area, the county was established like in the 1830s. So there were farms here and homesteads here even prior to that. So there's no way to trace it all the way back to when people first built here.
Yeah, but kind of intrigues me, like you were mentioning, kind of a hoodie and cargo pants. That puts it in a time frame where, maybe somebody, like I asked you before, if you ever did any research, if a young kid went missing, around there. Is there any woods or forests right around your house or your property or anything like that?
I have 35 acres, and all but about 3 are wooded.
Oh, so you could have a Bigfoot running around in your backyard and you don't even realize it.
I'm surrounded by farms, and the Gasconade River is just down the hill from me.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe that kid you saw was actually a Bigfoot disguising himself as a human for he could, check your property and you out. I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I was just thinking, I wanted to ask Liz, have you ever done any of those downloads on ghost apps on your phone, just to kind of hang it around your house just to see if anything strange shows up? I mean, I'm not kidding about that, because I do know some of my paranormal clients out there that do ghost hunting and those kinds of things have these. They swear by some of the really nice ghost apps that will actually tell you information if you ask questions and those kinds of things. Have you ever tried those, or even a very simple compass? Just setting the compass on a table and seeing if it moves periodically.
I haven't. It's not something that's ever really bothered me, so I never really thought about digging into it that much.
Yeah.
Well, I'd tell you.
I mean,
I would tell you what, Liz. I'll tell you this. Myself, if I was in the bedroom, right, sleeping, and my bedroom door open and closed, I'd tell you one thing. I'd be looking for a new house really fast, because if it was nothing there and that door open and closed, I mean, gee, number one, I don't want somebody to see my naked body. Number two is, well, if they did, they would die of fright. But I mean, on the other hand, I would be really, paranoid about what, like some of the things that's happening to you. I mean, I didn't even believe in all this stuff here to, I hate to say it, the past year doing this new show, Strictly All Paranormal. I mean, it's not the same as it was when I did it back in the 70s. Because now, I mean, people are so much open on stuff, it kind of really intrigues me, and some of it actually scares me.
Well, part of it is with me growing up, we had, I guess, basically our house was haunted. Even though we built the house, the property was haunted. So we would all be downstairs and hear doors open and close. We would hear what sounded like boots walking across the length of the upstairs hardwood floors, and all of us would be downstairs. So for me, this is normal.
You ever think?
I don't think anything about it. I grew up with it. This is normal for me.
Yeah, but do you ever think maybe when you were a kid and you one of those entities maybe followed you to where you're at now and is there? Is that possible?
I don't think so, because I lived in a house in between times and there was nothing there. There was never anything out of the ordinary that happened. So I think whatever is going on here where I live now is here on the property.
Well, you're brave. I tell you, you're brave. Hey,
brave or crazy? I mean, it could be either one.
Or a combination of both. How's that? We'll tie it into that way.
Yeah, it could be.
Hey, I want to thank you for coming on the show. with no notice. And, hey, Michael, I do want to talk to you for a minute after we let Liz go. But, again, everybody, I want you to go check out her books on Amazon and support her by buying one. And also, if your wife is coming up with a birthday, you might, again, tell everybody your website, because with your jewelry, I mean, it's really awesome, and they ought to take a look at it.
The website is Liz Reader Books. There's an S at the end of it, .com. And through that, you can go to the shop, which has all my jewelry and signed copies of the first book available. And you can also catch all of the links on the books to purchase through Amazon, the different publishers. The first book is even available with Google and iTunes and Barnes & Noble.
Okay. Well, any last question you want to ask her before I let her go, Michael?
No, Liz, I just wanted to thank you for I know how difficult it is and how many hours you have to spend and how many other things you have to not do when you sit down to write books. So thank you for all your patience and your creativity.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fun to do. For me, that's my escape, is being able to do that.
Well, great. I want to thank you again. Also, I want to thank you for always sharing our, network and our show up on Facebook. I do appreciate that, because I'm sure that has brought us so many more listeners we would never have had. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you on that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, kid. Well, you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Night. So you got to tell me, Michael, how did the filming go, and how exciting was it over the weekend getting away with all those cool people? And did you see anything strange in the sky at all?
Oh, Gary, thank you for asking, because I'll tell you what, we spent an entire weekend from Friday at 12 noon till Sunday at about 3 o'clock, 3:30, working on this pitch pilot episode of the UFO I-Team's unscripted reality TV show. And our episode that we're filming right now is called Soft Disclosure with a Hard Landing. And for the entire weekend, we were either filming or reviewing film and videotape of people that have caught UFOs on camera up in this small little town in the North Cascades, close to the Canadian border in Washington State. So I'm very excited. That's the bottom line. We have got, these shows, they want some kind of a wow factor, something to keep the attention and to bring the audience and or keep the audience and make sure they don't turn the channel. But I tell you what, we've got wow factor that is stunning. We've got, for instance, right off the bat on Friday night, our camera guy, which Lee Strauss, he's our intrepid guide, and he's got all of our equipment that has night vision and stop action photography. He sets up with a sweeping view of Mount Baker, waits till the sun goes down, and starts just looking all over the night sky with his gear. And by the way, he has these large monitors on the tripod, so he didn't have to just look through the eyepiece all the time. He says on Friday night he caught at least 2 different UFOs flying in front of Mount Baker. This was not in the night sky where you could confuse it with the International Space Station, satellites, or even shooting stars. This is something that was moving in an erratic motion in front of the giant volcano, Mount Baker. So we're excited that right off the bat he got some footage in that regard. And I can tell you later on, I can tell you further if you'd like to about some of the other things that we've captured up there, but it seems to be a hot spot of UFO activity.
Well, it does. And boy, I mean, how many people of your group were there? How many of you were, all there that night and the next day. You still there? Hello? Hey, we just lost him. Well, we'll talk for a minute and hopefully he calls back. That is some of the problems I find with Skype. Okay. That's one thing I hate about Skype. Right in the middle of something good, or one of the government agencies, hung us up purposely. Can you hear me? Okay, you're back, but you're not hearing anything. Oh boy, Michael.
I'm here, Gary. If you can hear me.
No, I can hear you, but I don't think you're hearing me.
No, I sure cannot hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Don't know what to say. Hopefully, I would try rebooting your computer, but that is really a bummer when that happens. I'm kind of curious, how many people were actually there. I'm going to try to send them a message. Let's see here. But, I find it so intriguing. Okay, here he is. Let's hopefully this time. Okay, can you hear me this time, Michael? Hello? He's not hearing me again. So that tells me that he is going to have to reboot his computer. Reboot. Let's see. I'm going to send him a message here. Hopefully he looks and sees that. But that makes me, wonder, about things that go out, at night. I mean, if people are out by Mount Baker and they can record something flying in the sky that, it's not the space station, not a satellite. There's just so many strange things that are out in the sky. It reminds me back in early 2000s when I took home a pair of infrared binoculars, Russian issue actually. And I just, got tired of looking at the neighbors and raccoons in the trees and stuff like that. I all of a sudden, started looking at the sky, and then all of a sudden I started seeing things that you couldn't see with a telescope. I mean, I was seeing things zigzagging and coming to a stop and then going a complete different direction. I don't know anything that we have, or maybe we do have, that is capable of doing that. But that makes you always wonder, if there is other things out there. And they have, seen so many different UFOs. And I'm sure a lot of people listening have actually seen a UFO. Now, I don't know if it is tied in with our secret space agency that we just now are creating, or a space force. Let's see if he's got it rebooted this time and see if that... Can you hear me this time? Hello?
Hello, Gary, I'm back.
And you can hear me? Hello? Well, you're not hearing me. I don't know what to say. That's the trouble sometimes with Skype. The new Skype just seems to, I was reading online today. People are complaining right and left about the new Skype that is having serious problems where people just can't, get it to work right. So give me a CV. Okay. So anyway, I'm buying a little bit of time here because, boy, even our first guest night, we talked a little bit about Planet X. How many out there of you believe that there is a Planet X and that our government is keeping it from us because they're worried about people are going to panic? Because, if you read about it, it could be a life extinction force on Earth where it takes all of us out and we're no longer here. It tears their planet apart. There's so many different things and theories about Planet X. I know some of it have said that Planet X is, supposed to have hit around 2015, 2016. Here we're now into 2018, so their predictions were off by a couple years. But then I was reading today Nancy Joyce on her website posted an article about Planet X, saying that a scientist claims it is heading towards the Earth, and I don't know what's going to happen, but again, the government's trying to cover it up, and he's a whistleblower, and you can find that information out on Skyships Over Cashiers, or cashiers.com. That's skyshipovercashiers.com. And Mary Joyce has a very good reporting system. It covers UFOs and Bigfoot and all these type of reports, and it goes back for years. It's one of the more extensive databases for this stuff. Almost as good, or if not equal to Peter Davenport's, the UFO Reporting Center over here in Washington State. Makes you wonder what is going on. And would the government disclose to us that there is maybe a life-ending thing heading towards our planet? But then, they said the same thing back around 2000 about, all the computers are going to crash. All of them are going to crash because they, weren't set up to go past 2000. Well, guess what? Well, you know what? They went past 2000. They didn't crash. Wall Street didn't crash, and all the banking systems didn't crash, and life went on just like normal. So I don't know. My last guess, Walt, basically said, well, he's not going to worry about it because it's just like if you go out of your house, you get hit with lightning, you're gone. I mean, why worry about it? But that's what I like talking about this show. I mean, you get all these people's different points of view, and, so much more information you can't find. We've had some major people on our show, like Stephen Bassett, talking about how the government is, not telling us everything and trying to get disclosure of the government. And supposedly, it's supposed to be, according to Stephen, happening very, very shortly in the next year or so, that the government is actually going to admit that there is UFOs. We'll wait and see. I've been waiting for that for a long time, but a lot of things have happened. Like the video was placed on the internet and with a news service about the two Navy pilots that encountered a UFO, and they tried chasing after it with their afterburners, and they didn't get anywhere. The thing just walked away from them like nothing. Then you had the Secretary of the Air Force a couple months afterwards, mentioning to the cadets that, the next war won't be a ground war. It won't be on our planet. It'll be in outer space. So you can take that two ways. Is it like, hey, we're going to be in war with another country in space? Or is there aliens out there that maybe aren't friendly? Let's see if his computer works this time. Give that a try. I hope you're there this time. You there?
Hello, Gary. I'm on again, but I still can't hear you. I've got a buzz in the background. It looks like we're not connected.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out what is going on.
Oh, I can hear you now, buddy.
You can hear me now. Okay, that is. Yeah. You know what? We're talking subjects that the government doesn't want us to talk about.
Oh, I think the trolls are out there monitoring us all the time, Gary.
Wow.
And it was kind of a strange coincidence that I'm talking about UFOs flying all around the North Cascades.
and then all of a sudden, there you are. History. I find that really intriguing that happened. Ronald Farnham, has been on my show a couple of times. He's, was with the DOD for 10 years. And, the stuff he told me, it really, really scares me. I mean, God, make sure you put tape over your laptop camera when you go to bed at night, and don't have it up open when you go to bed at night. I tell you that. Or watch when you walk around your smart TV at night, and don't do anything you shouldn't be doing, because you might be, the guy on the other end might be eating his popcorn and drinking his beer, watching you.
Yeah, they're probably bored, watching me, but I'm sure that they're being monitored, monitoring us, just to figure out what the heck we know and what we're talking about. But That just kind of makes it exciting. I believe that there are black hat organizations like that, but I think that there's white hat organizations within the power structure that are actually helping us as well get the word out. And that's what I'm hoping on.
Well, I'm hoping that Steve Bassett is right in the next year, that the government's going to come out and admit that there is UFOs and has been UFOs. They need to tell, I mean, come on, we're not that stupid anymore. You know, going back in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, you could probably get by without people questioning. But people have gotten smarter, you know, in the late 70s and 80s, and nowadays, I mean, people want to know, especially since 1990, when, you know, Art Bell started his show, you know, in the paranormal. That really educated millions of people, got them wondering what is out there in space, you know, let alone what's in the forest. But, you know, people want to know, and it's really hard to, you know, sit there and tell people, oh, there's no such thing as UFOs. Okay, well, then how do you describe that? How do you describe that? You know, what I'm really concerned right now is Planet X. I don't know if you heard earlier, but Nancy Joyce put out today on her website, skyshiftsovercashiers.com, article from a scientist that claims if you go in Antarctica, you can actually see, with the telescopes, you can see the Planet X approaching by the sun. And there's been other people that supposedly have taken pictures of the sun and see an object, you know, approaching, you know, the side of the sun. It makes you wonder if there is a Planet X, but the people who have been predicting this is supposed to have happened in 2015 and 2016. Well, hey, they could be off a couple years, you know.
Well, and that's, of course, a typical PSYOP program, that if something actually indeed is going to come at us, that they want to throw out some false dates prior to that to desensitize folks into even believing it. So, yeah, you're exactly right. Matter of fact, of course, there's many interesting safaris and expeditions to the South Pole. There's governments, and I've even heard of the Catholic Church having their own telescopes, and they're, for some reason, looking in that direction. From what I gather, the way we are configured within the Milky Way, looking south from our planet, is a much clearer view of what's going on than anywhere else. So that's where they all have the observatories.
Yeah, that's what is really, really scary, you know. That, you know, I don't know how the public would, you know, handle it. But, you know, the last time supposedly Planet X came by Earth, which was around 3,600 years ago, I mean, you know, hey, I don't know. It didn't wipe out everything on Earth. So I don't know if it would be a life extension or extinction of Earth or not, you know, and would, you know, I can see something like that if it was, why the government wouldn't, you know, come out and tell the people, because I think, you know, it'd be mass panic if they say, hey, in the next year or next 2 years or 18 months, you know, this is going to fly by Earth, and by the way, it's going to destroy everything on Earth. I mean, how would people handle that? No, how would you handle it, Michael, if you knew that there was only 16 or 18 months left and everything we know will be gone?
Well, you know, there's a really good movie with Steve Carell that has that exact same theme in it. And it's, I forget what it's called, The Last Man on Earth or something like that, where he actually meets a woman, and everyone on the planet knows that the world is going to end in a week or something like that. And it just gives you a real interesting perspective in that film of, well, what would you do if you had just 1 week left? Would you panic and go crazy to see if there's anything you can do to survive, or would you just accept it and try to do the best you can for whatever time you have left? I don't know what I would do. It's hard to tell ahead of time, I'm sure, but I hope I wouldn't freak out about it. Matter of fact, you know, my feeling is that this is just a stop along the way to a whole nother possibility for all of us. So it'd be interesting to see what's after this lifetime.
Yeah, honestly, I want it to be a long time away yet. I'm not that anxious to find out. I know some people say, hey, they can't wait. You know, I was talking to a guy the other day on the phone. He will be a guest on the show. He goes, well, it was an experience to be born, and it's an experience to be, you know, to go through death. And he can't wait to suffer death. And I go, why? I mean, you know, maybe life can be hell, but it has good moments in it, too. I certainly don't want to find out. I mean, can you look at it like Ronald Farnham keeps saying that we're nothing but we're in the metrics. We don't really exist. We're right. A number in a computer, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, all I can say is that I don't want to find out. You know, it's what's really bad is everything from a little kid you learn, right? All your thoughts, all your memories, all your experiences, all your loves, all your hates, and it goes by so fast, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. You know, I hate to say it. Sometimes I look at, like, you got an old computer, it craps out. What do you do with it? You throw it away. You know, it's gone. It's nothing left. No more, you know, no more computer, no more anything. And sometimes I think that's what, you know, I do believe in the Bible, but sometimes I wonder, like, when you're dead, it could be the same way. I mean, you know, our brain is a computer, and when we die, that's the end of it. It's just like a hard drive. When it fails, it's over with.
Yeah, boy. You know, I also believe in the Bible as well. And matter of fact, if you take a look at the Bible as a whole, you're talking probably the most paranormal book in the world is Sacred Scriptures, like the Bible for sure. Lots of stories in there that just don't seem to make sense to our human existence, but are fascinating stories that probably explain a lot of details that we are overlooking, including, you know, UFOs and, believe it or not, there's stories of witches in the Bible. Oh, yeah. And giants in the Bible. So it's all sorts of great stuff in there.
Well, you know one thing, man has always had to believe in a God. I mean, as soon as man was smart enough to communicate with another person, right, there was the fire god, there was the moon god, there was the star god, there was the god of the ocean, the god of, you know, whatever. There was a god for everything. Man has needed that to continue on, because if they didn't believe in the gods, right, then later on to a single God, I mean, you know, I think we wouldn't be in society the way we are right now. I don't even know if man would have gotten as far as we have, because man needs something to believe in, and if you take that belief away from him, he has nothing.
Well, and if Sitchin is correct in the fact that we might have been even created on this planet for a purpose that served other extraterrestrials, for instance, mining gold or having tasks to do, that, like beasts of burden, that they didn't want to do. I would imagine if they're creating or tweaking, you know, hominids on this planet to help them, that they're going to breed in that whole idea of us needing a God to worship. And my feeling is that the God that we've been focused on mostly in this world is just very small compared to the actual source, the source God that's out there pulling all the strings in the universe. That's much bigger than we could even imagine.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was a little kid, you know, my mom sat me down one time. She goes, Gary, you got to stop thinking about God and asking questions about God. You'll go crazy because there's no answer. There's no proof, no nothing. I mean, you have to take it at face value, you know? I mean, people have gone crazy thinking about, is there a God or isn't there a God? You know, you just have to take it. But what I was getting, my point is that humans always had to believe in some type of God. So, I mean, maybe there is more than one God, and there's, you know, going back to, you know, before the Romans and going back, even the Egyptians, there is multiple gods. And maybe the God that we associated with was not maybe a god, but life from another planet that came down and seeded Earth and watched over us.
Exactly. That makes a whole lot of sense, because we have descriptions in every culture on the planet of their God coming down from the heavens, and helping them with technology and knowledge in exchange for that worship as well. So these gods didn't look exactly the same, so I have a feeling you're correct. There were different races visiting the planet, needing certain resources and probably certain, help with doing work. And I think they've probably created many of the religions that we have on the planet.
Yeah, I won't even say that we're no more than a Big Mac. There may be some of the species out there too, which is always that possibility. I got another, and I have another guest coming up in the next couple of weeks again that claims that he was abducted, and he went through a very, very bad case when he was taken aboard a spaceship, and I mean he felt all the pain while they were prodding him and cutting them and taking fluids out of them and injecting fluids into him. And, he and the pain, he said it was so horrible that was, but he didn't forget it. I mean, when they returned him back on wherever he was taken from, he said he remembered everything he went through. And maybe they wanted him to remember all the pain he went through. I don't know.
Well, we've all heard of the stories of wiping out the memory and being able to mask the pain on some of their experiments, potentially, the things that they do to abductees. And I have actually heard the same story, Gary, from a different person, that indeed they did allow this person to experience pain of some of the procedures, and he got the feeling that they needed to monitor his awareness of pain or his reaction to certain procedures. So who knows what I can't wait to hear this guest coming on then.
Yeah, it's intriguing, and maybe you're right. They want to see how people respond to pain. I mean, rather than making them into a daze or giving them something where they don't feel anything and they do their experiments. At least they know how, just like being implanted. They maybe want to watch your thoughts and how you, function day to day just to figure out what the human race does. Now, going back to this video thing. Now, again, if somebody wants to join your group, is it open where people can join what you're doing? Or do they have to do a membership? Or do you have to vote them in? Or can they just start appearing at Denny's and join you guys? What's all involved? That's some of the questions I've had asked the last couple of weeks of me to ask you.
Oh, well, wonderful. I'm glad that people are interested in paying attention. We are a very informal group. The UFO I-Team is probably around 12 members strong at this point, just members that are regular on a weekly basis. We have meetings. They can go to UFO I-Team with a lowercase I on Facebook and just check us out first if they'd like to, because we do live stream our weekly meetings on Wednesday night, 6 p.m. to approximately 8 p.m. And if they're interested, they can always come and attend our meetings, because we welcome folks to come and share their stories with us and to help us kind of figure out what's going on as well. And I guess like we were talking about earlier, we had all 12 of us up there in a small little community of Glacier, Washington this weekend, filming a very exciting pitch pilot episode of this reality TV show we're working on. And we believe that we are doing a service by actually, basically red-pilling the public on what the heck is really going on out there and being able to show it and prove it on tape and in testimony from witnesses as well.
Now, are you worried about any guys in black or anything coming up to you after you get this going after, people are starting to discover you now because you're doing the show for Night Dreams Talk Radio, correct? And plus you're streaming
Yes.
it off Facebook Live. So that means you're opening yourself up to review by the DOD and some other agencies. Are you worried that they might try debunking your group or anything like that?
Well, I have always had that thought in my mind. I've been interested in ufology for well over 40 years. And, of course, I've been Peter Davenport's attorney for the last 23 years for the National UFO Reporting Center. So I've heard all the stories, the Men in Black, the deep state, the pressure on people not to tell the truth. But I'll tell you what, I'm experiencing, I'm seeing out there that there's this concerted effort on behalf of someone in the powers that be to get the word out about this. There seems to be a very important thing, I believe, coming down the road that they need to prepare the public for in general. And so that's why you see the front page article in the New York Times confirming existence of UFOs and that there was a government program studying these things, including a down craft that they have metamaterials of that they can't figure out how it works. So that's important. Things are happening so quickly that I'm not so much worried about being shut down now at this point. Otherwise, we would never have even gotten this far as what we do live streaming wise.
Oh, I don't know about
films together.
I don't know about that because I can say this, doing my show, it seems like every time I get a guest on, okay, even tonight before you came on with the guest I had on, as soon as we started talking about, Planet X and, UFO type of thing, all of a sudden, I was having problems. And as soon as we changed the subject, the problem just went away. Then later on during that hour, we talked about something again. It touched on the same thing. I started having problems, like weird noise coming on, being picked up or being, disconnected. And not just tonight, but it happens quite often. If I start talking about UFOs or government conspiracies, all of a sudden, during the conversation, like an hour or 2 hour show, I'll be disconnected with a guest at least 3 or 4 times. But if we're talking about something else, it doesn't ever happen. So I find that kind of strange.
Yeah. And my feeling is that there is definitely compartmentalization going on with the deep state. There are projects out there, probably government trolls sitting out there monitoring all these broadcasts and kind of, stirring up the pot, cutting people off whenever they need to. But I think there also is probably the white hats in there that are kind of still steering the idea of leaking the truth on a faster and faster basis, I believe, right now. I often wonder, since last December, since the New York Times article came out, and the new things that we've learned just since then, what will happen before next December, and or what happens in next December? Is there something else coming down the road that they need to prepare us for? Because otherwise, why would they be doing this at this point? You're right. They're giving certain people certain hard times, and they're kind of monitoring what we're doing. But overall, the information is coming out swifter and swifter all the time, I believe.
Well, I don't know if you listened to the interview with Steve Bassett, but I mean, that's one. Yeah. He was saying too. He feels it's going to be within the year. The government's going to make a big announcement about UFOs. Now, again, too, we don't know if they're going to be friendly or non-friendly. It'd be, and if they finally come out and say, well, there is UFOs, but they might not tell us everything about it. They might just come out and say, yes, we're being visited by UFOs. We're trying to find out more information. We'll let the public know as we find out more, which means they could drag it out for another 20 years. But then the other aspect is if the visitors, or some of them, might not be friendly. I mean, Mary Joyce and on her website, really, and when I've had her on the show, she said that there is aliens on this planet working with our government that are not friendly with humans. They're only working with our government, and our government's working with them just to benefit each other.
Right. Well, I believe you're correct there. If the universe follows the laws and the rules that we see on this tiny little planet, we of course got good people, we have bad people, we have people all in between, and so I would think that that's got to be the case on other planets and or other places in the universe. The real interesting thought that I always keep in the back of my mind is, if there was a race that was out there to destroy us and had the ability to do that, they probably would have done that well before we developed the hydrogen bomb or some of these large weapons that we have now that could actually make some difference and wreak some havoc out there. I don't know why they would have waited this long to potentially wipe us out if they could have done it even 100 years ago.
Yeah, but maybe again, you have to realize maybe it could be gene, splicing, or they need something from us, for their race to continue on.
I believe that. I think you're right. I mean, there is a reason. Potentially, then, the reverse of that argument is they're keeping us alive and or not wiping us out because we are valuable to them somehow.
Yeah, we could also be. We could be a Big Mac to them too. They could be, abducting us. Basically for breeding us. On another planet or their planet or whatever, and we're no more than cattle is. With us. I mean, till we find out. It's so many different ways you can take it. I see evidence and proof. I'm not going to look at them, and I'm not going to come up to an alien and put my arms around you and say, "Welcome, brother," because I don't know what their motives are. I mean, if they were friendly and they wanted to help us, I think they would have made their appearance a lot sooner known, and try to work things out with the human race. I really think that there's maybe different aliens from different solar systems and galaxies out there that maybe have different objectives than. Yeah. So we could be, like I said, a Big Mac, or we could be maybe something that we can give them that they can't have no longer on their planet. Now, also on the news, I was reading about today that was a galaxy that's close to us that kind of like is gobbling up other solar systems, their galaxies, kind of like eating them up. That makes you wonder if we could be next on its menu.
Yeah. Yeah. Let alone what kind of black holes and dangers there are in our own Milky Way galaxy that it takes, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of years for our planet to make only one circle around the galactic center. So it's kind of interesting to see what we're headed towards right now in the galaxy, just in our own neck of the woods.
Well, we could enter all into a black hole. And that's another thing about black hole. Just recently, they actually got proof that something emerged out on the opposite end of a black hole, and they have never in studying black holes all these years, never seen anything come out of a black hole. They've seen plenty of things go in it, but they never seen something come out.
Well, speaking of that, that's a great analogy to, believe it or not, some footage that we have seen. This is still frame footage up from the place that we just came from this weekend, where it looks as if these craft, UFOs, are coming either into or going out of some kind of portal in the sky. It's just fascinating stuff. It has 3D depth to it, this portal, and it looks as if the craft that we're spotting has something to do with that portal. So who knows where that's going, whether that's using a black hole to come in and out, or whether it's just the portal system that we don't know about that helps people travel from distance to distance without having to actually go through the speed of light or whatever they do.
Well, maybe that's how they came up with the Stargate series, huh? One of the guys started studying black holes and possibility of, portals where you can, come through and go through time and all that stuff and end up in a different place. So, hey, it's a very good possibility. I mean, they're getting here somehow. And that makes more logical sense. That would be the fastest way. They could go through a portal and be here a matter of days or hours or, weeks versus years or lifetimes,
As a matter of fact, the famous Canadian ufologist Grant Cameron is talking currently about the portals that he is discovering with certain UFO groups that are meeting at Mount Shasta, various locations around the world, and experiencing these portals opening and craft coming out of them, not only craft, but entities, coming out of the portals as well. So that seems to be a hot topic.
Yeah, Bigfoot too, stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Now,
and, those stories as well.
Now, coming up here Sunday, we're getting away from the paranormal kind of on your show. You forgot to tell, guess who? Peter Davenport?
Yes, I apologize.
That's okay. And then I got a message from the other paranormal lawyer. She thought it was this Sunday, too. And I said, no, it's next Sunday. But you guys are going to be talking about, I'll let you tell everybody.
Well, yes, we have to give a little shout out to Tina Foster, the other paranormal lawyer that I've been talking with out here, who is studying or at least coming up with a very detail-oriented and referenced book about Paul McCartney being killed in 1966, supposedly, and replaced with a double who is really the Paul McCartney now, and she has forensic evidence, she has biometric studies, and voice print studies that she believes will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Paul McCartney that we are seeing nowadays is not really the original Beatle Paul McCartney. She's a fascinating researcher. She has multiple degrees and graduate degrees, 2 law degrees, by the way, and is the ultimate researcher. So I can't wait to get Tina Foster on the show this coming Sunday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on your show right here, nightdreamstalkradio.com, and it's going to be a fascinating interview. We could go probably much more than 2 hours with the details that she is coming out with her book, and why she's having some trepidations about actually publishing the book too, with some of the maybe the black cat things that are going on in her life because of how famous she's getting in her blog on this matter.
Oh yeah, I've watched conspiracy things about Paul McCartney in the past. If he was in a car accident and died, the original Paul McCartney, that was actually even before the Beatles actually made it, if I remember right, even made it big. And regardless if it's the original Paul McCartney, and if they pulled a hoax and they put a substitute in or whatever, I mean, I do like Paul McCartney, the one that there is now. I mean, I really like his music. I mean, he's in, his late 70s now, and he's still, or mid-70s, still going strong, with his music and, his philosophy. So even if he's not the original Beatle, my hat's off to him. And then if he's not the original Beatle and he was the one that replaced the one that died, then they pulled off one of the biggest hoaxes ever in music, ever.
Exactly. And this might even be, for instance, if this is the case, and there's evidence that it might be the case, might be the kind of card at the bottom of the house of cards that brings a whole lot of other things to light as well. If they can do this with the Beatles And her claim is, by the way, that by the time the album Sgt. Pepper came out, that all of the Beatles were actually imposter replaced by that time as well. The idea being that there was an agenda out there for the Illuminati groups, the deep state, to mess with the youth of the world, really, in kind of tearing down society. So the music was one way of doing that during that period of time. It's a fascinating story, and you're right. There are lots of ramifications to this being, if it's true, then there's got to be some other questions asked on other subjects.
Oh, yeah, but don't forget, too, we're going back in the 60s here, which there was absolutely no internet, no nothing. Everything was done by either wire on the news. Everything had a delay by the time it got out to the public. And it was so much easier, to hide, to change things, change your identity back then, which you can't, it's almost impossible nowadays. I mean, if you try to change your identity, you can, if you really search hard enough, you can still find traces of that person before there was a change. So, I mean, in that time frame, yeah. And they had an objective. They really feel that, I hate to say it, we are basically worthless to them. The objective is that the wealthy, the leaders of the world, the Queen, and all these other different leaders are the ones that are important, not us. And they actually, from everything I read, they'd like to see us dead anyway. The majority, they would love to see a majority of the population of this world gone, just gone overnight.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, the George Guidestone agenda, lots of different kinds of Illuminati and black state agendas are, there's too many of us, and we're becoming much more smarter than ever, and we have access to resources to get the truth that have never been around before. I think that's a major issue that they're having to deal with, and who knows how they're going to try to accomplish this, reducing the population, because it's possible we're going to get out of control and or have too much power.
Well, you know what? I also look at this. Now, we're getting way out there. So if we get disconnected from what I'm going to say, so they announce here, that we're being visited by UFOs, right? And then they come out and say, well, the UFOs are not friendly. They're foe, right? Then they come back and say, this is why we created the new Space Force to protect Earth. Well, it'd be a good way to get rid of a lot of the population, wouldn't it?
There you go. Yes, maybe in fact, there's
martial law. Number one, they instantly. Yeah. In fact, I was reading that that we are actually in martial law, and it has never been removed from years and years ago when they declared it. They never removed it. That they could actually act on it at any time. Have you heard that?
Yes. Good for you. Historically, it's interesting to see how the posse comitatus laws have been written and still on the books, those kinds of issues, and whether they can move against the domestic population with actual government troops at any moment. And there's a lot of people out there that have been reporting the fact that there's government movements going on all the time around our country that go unreported, and they don't know why that would be the case. But something seems to be coming down the road here that could be interesting and or devastating to the mass amount of folks.
Well, how about the little things you get into, because we only got like about 4 minutes left. Conspiracies, like all the FEMA camps they build across the country that are sitting empty.
Yes.
Why would they build all these FEMA camps to house people? I mean, they're not putting the aliens in from, coming into the country in them. Why are they leaving them? You know, it is kind of like a strange thing. And Art Bell one time told me that he actually believed that they even go as far as your where you live, your address, and all that stuff depends on basically if you're going to be in a FEMA camp or not. And that's what we were talking about one time on the phone. So that, you know, he got that from a couple of his guests he's had on the show. So all this stuff makes you just wonder, you know, something down the road comes up where they go, yay, we're going to admit to the American public there are aliens. We had to create a Space Force to protect Earth. And, you know, and then, you know, we have to declare martial law. We have to do this. Now we got to take a certain amount of people for your own safety where you live at. You know, we have to move you over in, well, gee, the only place we got is these camps. And we're going to move you into the camps for your own protection. You know, you can take this a lot of different ways.
Yes. And you're not going to be hearing anything about it on Fox News or the mainstream media at this point. So that's why I hope people will tune in, of course, to, nightdreamstalkradio.com so they can figure out what the heck is going on before it hits the fan.
Well, see, you know, one thing I do, too, is I get all these people. I get at least 5 to 10 people a day that want to be a guest on my show. I now booked up all the way into, like, the middle of September. But I talk to each one of these people, or the majority of them, I talk to for about a half an hour. You know, and if I don't talk to them, we chat back and forth by text, you know, or they give me links to their websites and stuff like that. And some of these people really, really scares me about, you know, their feelings or the information they have. You know, either you take what they're saying as they're liars or they're, you know, making stuff up, or they know stuff that, you know, they ran across that, you know, accidentally or where they worked, that it kind of, you know, scares me. And it should scare a lot of people. I mean, you know, like I said, when I had Ronald Farnham on, and he's going to be on here, I think, in the next week or so again. Some of the stuff he's talked about really kind of, you know, makes me wonder what is actually going on. We don't have the freedoms that we think. I mean, everything you type, you send an email, right, to your friend, your lover, or your wife, or your enemy. You know, it's being sent and stored over against, you know, in some, you know, Utah or New Mexico or some of the other places in Nevada, that if there was ever a problem with you, they can all of a sudden bring out this evidence against you. I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't realize is going on, you know. Again, you know, me talking this way, you know, even you being on, okay, with your views, okay, if you've been tagged, okay, the next person that talks to you, they get tagged. That's what he told me. So just by, so they develop a little case on everyone, and it sits in, you know, a data bank, and if they ever have to pull it out, there it is. Yeah,
exactly. That's why we all have to realize that and either make a choice to toe the line or don't worry about it and keep searching for the truth and bringing it out as much as you possibly can. You have to make a personal choice at one point. So,
well, if you believe in the paranormal, if you believe in UFOs, if you believe in Bigfoot or your ghost or anything like that, I mean, you know, it's your right as a citizen of this country. You can voice it. And that's why you find Coast to Coast, you find my show and all these other talk shows where you can call in and voice your own opinion. Hey, our time is up. Again, tell everybody when you're going to be on your show. And, you know, are you going to take any call-ins on the show this time, or just going to be talking 2 hours straight about Paul McCarthy?
Well, I have a feeling, Gary, that if we have the capability, we will have lots of folks that want to talk with Tina Foster. She is literally the world's expert on the idea that Paul McCartney was killed in 1966 and replaced. So that show will be on this coming Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m., Pacific Standard Time on nightdreamsradio.com, nightdreamstalkradio.com. Let me get that in there.
Okay, sir. Well, hey, again, I don't know how you got disconnected or what was going on tonight, but I found it kind of strange. And, you know, again, I want to thank Walt for being on our show tonight. Liz, I want you guys to, you know, check out her website, her Facebook. and help support, one of our guests. She's a single mother with a child, and she's wrote these series of books. And if you're into monsters and creepy little things, slimy slugs that cover you with the slime, hey, get one of her books. And again, if you're into UFOs, the UFO I-Team, they meet at Denny's. We're at, is that at Edmonds or Bothell? Where do they meet?
That's in Linwood, Washington on 196th Street.
And what day of the week?
Wednesday nights, 6 to 8 p.m.
And new people are welcome to come in and sit in and listen, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll even take the trolls and the black hats. Why not?
Okay, and I got a funny feeling you're slowly taking over that Denny's that night of the week, too, right?
Hey, it's where America eats. We love it.
And they got great coffee, too. So now I want to check from Denny's. So anyway, everybody, we're going to get out of here. I want to thank even Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer, for coming in here and, and talking here for the last almost 2 hours.
Hey, thank you, Gary.
Okay, sir, you have a great one.
You too.
Okay, night. So, everybody, the show just keeps getting better. Tomorrow, we have, let me look at my list here. We're going to be talking about with a psychic and what their abilities are, being a psychic and all that stuff. That's tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's only a 2-hour show, so we'll be on from 8 to 10 p.m. Pacific West Coast time. Tell your friends.
Looking for a new gig? Domino's has what you need. Whether you're a student looking to pay your way through college or a parent looking for 12 hours per week to pay that mortgage, look no more. Chicagoland Domino's Pizza locations have immediate openings for delivery experts. Drivers take home cash daily. And if you're interested in making a career out of it, 90% of all Domino's franchisees started as delivery drivers or pizza makers. See details and apply at jobs.domino's.com or visit any Chicagoland Domino's location.